Hi, good evening, everyone. We are just going to spend a little time to let people join. So for you, those of you who have already signed in, I am Jonathan Starling, the Economic and Cooperative Development Officer at BEDC. We are just going to give a few minutes to let additional people join before we start fully. So for those of you who have joined in, we're just waiting a little moment. There will be questions after the presentations, and the way you can do it is you can type your questions in the chat box, which you'll see, and we will read them and do our best to answer them at that time. I'm just waiting for a few more people to join before I start the presentation. I'm just giving people until about 5:35, just to allow more people to join. Then I will start the presentation. For those of you who have just joined in, I am waiting till 5:35 before I start the presentation, just letting additional people join in.
Well, how are you, Jonathan?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. How are you, Shelly?
Awesome. I'm good. Are you excited about having this conversation about crowdfunding?
I sure am. This is actually my first webinar, so I'm hoping people go easy on me and forgive me with my as I as I learn.
Hey, well, listen, if you're joining us right now, share out to a friend, share on your social media, tell people to get in here because we're gonna drop gems on crowdfunding and what that looks like and how that could work for you and your business. And we all need some funds, right, to grow our business. So text somebody, tell somebody that we'll have some experts dropping some knowledge today, whether it be VC. Also in the chat drop your name, your company, where you're from. I mean, now that everybody's pretty virtual for the most part, and we're living in this virtual world, it's important that you network with each other. And one way to do that when you're on a virtual event is to act. Well, not one way, a couple ways to do that when you're on a virtual event is to always make a comment in the chat because at least somebody's going to see your name. At least people will see your company, see what you do. So drop your name, your company. You can also ask questions when you ask questions and drop your name. That's a really great way for people to be able to know who you are or know that you were at this event. And oh, we got questions already. I didn't even see that. All
Thank you,
right.
Shelly. I get the
Okay,
impression
good,
you've
good,
done these
good.
things before.
Um, so yeah, I'm excited.
That's good. Um, I think we can pretty much get started. So I'll just give an overview of what tonight's going to be like. And by the time I finish that, we should have some additional people, and then we can just proceed. So, good evening to everyone who's joining us here for the BDC's webinar, Small Investments for a Big Payout. Um, my name is Jonathan Starling. I'm the Economic and Cooperative Development Officer at the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation. And I'm joined tonight by Shelly Bell, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Black Girl Ventures. And we, as Shelly just mentioned, there is the chat option here, and we would encourage you to type in the chat, just introduce yourself, say who you are. It's a great networking opportunity to identify each other. And um, you can also ask questions. We will try to address the questions towards the end. So the way we are going to do it tonight is I will present a general introduction to cooperatives, and then I will pass it over to Shelly, who will talk about her experiences and give some good advice on pitching, which is kind of a key to crowdfunding. And then after that, we will have some questions. I do want to say that I know that this was originally scheduled for, was it 2 weeks ago? Of course, here in Bermuda, for those of you joining us from overseas, we were hit by 2 consecutive hurricanes over the last 2 weeks. And as a result, we rescheduled this event. Now, unfortunately, with the rescheduling, we lost some of the guest speakers that we had hoped to be able to present today. And as a result of that, we may not be able to answer all the questions you have, but we will do our best and we'll take it from there. As I said, you can ask questions in the chat. And after the presentation is over, we will be sending out the materials. And there are also contact information so you can reach out to us for additional questions or information that you might have. So on that note, Shelly, I'm just going to begin. Is there anything you wanted to add before I start?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, cool. So good evening. Welcome everyone to BDC's webinar, Small Investments for a Big Payout. I should preface everything by saying that this is my first webinar, and I'm not the best public speaker, so bear with me as I try. As I said, I'm the Economic and Cooperative Development Officer at Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, and Shelly Bell is the Chief Executive Officer of Black Arrow Ventures. And we are here tonight to talk about crowdfunding. So, what is crowdfunding? At its simplest way, crowdfunding is a way to raise capital from a large pool of people through small contributions. Today is mostly an online fundraising process. Some of the most popular fundraising platforms that you might be aware of are things like GoFundMe or Kickstarter. However, crowdfunding goes back, it's got a history that predates the internet. One of the most famous cases of crowdfunding in the past was actually the Statue of Liberty, which graces the harbor of New York City. Whereas the statue itself was built and shipped over to America by the French people of France, it was discovered that they didn't actually have enough money to prepare Ellis Island, the pedestal, for raising the Statue of Liberty. And because of that, the newspaper owner, Joseph Pulitzer, he decided to launch a public campaign inviting citizens to donate small amounts to help fundraise for that. And they were able to raise $100,000 in just 5 months. And that's a case of crowdfunding before the internet. What the internet has done is it's just kind of allowed that to take it to the next level, to make it a lot smoother, and to really expand the pool that people can reach. So a lot of people are more familiar with kind of what I will call traditional crowdfunding. That would be, if you have a business idea, you might go to your friends and family and just say, look, I have this idea. It's going to be great. You know how good I am at whatever, say baking or cooking, but I don't have the capital to open a restaurant or a bakery. Do you believe in me and will you fund me? And that's going to your friends and family and asking for the startup capital. And crowdfunding really isn't any different from that. It's just one additional way to raise the capital for you to start your business. As I said, it's now mostly an online fundraising process, and there's actually a huge amount of online sites to facilitate crowdfunding. There's over 450. I didn't count them all, but I got to 450 and figured that was enough. And since the rise of crowdfunding online, over $1.5 billion has been raised through crowdfunding. Now, this is mostly a Western phenomenon, and by that I mean it's mostly in Europe, North America, Australia, and New Zealand that it's really dominant. About 80% of all crowdfunding is done in the West. So yeah, and just to remind everyone that we will do questions at the end of this, so you can pop your questions into the chat, and we will address them after the presentation. And so the basic workings of crowdfunding is you want to make your pitch. You want people to know why they should support you, why they should give you money to help you get your business off the ground. And making your pitch is kind of fundamental to any startup. In fact, I just want to take a little segue and mention that BEDC is doing a rocket pitch competition in November. And you can find information about that on our website, bedc.bm. And basically, the rocket pitch is you have, I want to say it's about 5 minutes to make your pitch to a panel of judges about why your idea is worthy of investment. And through the BEDC's rocket pitch competition, you have the opportunity to win some startup capital as well as some other services to assist you with that. And in the audience, you have the opportunity of finding additional investors. So if you're interested in that, if you're trying to start up your business and you want practice on making your pitch, I really encourage you to check out our website, bedc.bm, and look for our rocket pitch. And, you know, what do you got to lose? So back to crowdfunding. So you want to make your pitch. Now, on most of the websites, you have the opportunity to just kind of write out and outline what your business idea is and why it's a good idea and what you need the money for. Some of them allow you to also add a video, and I would encourage you, if you have that opportunity, to do that, because in our day and age, people's attention span is more likely to watch a video than to read, but do both. And so after you make your pitch, make your case about why your business should be funded, then you need to outline how much money you need and why. Like, what is that money going to be used for? So you want to have that all on the page. I'm talking here about the online crowdfunding. Now, you also want to say what, if anything, donors may receive. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But basically, with crowdfunding, there is the opportunity for the donors, the people giving you money, to receive something. So, for example, the case about the Statue of Liberty that I talked about earlier, what they did for that campaign was people who donated money received a miniature replica of the Statue of Liberty. It cost less than any of the donations that were given to them, but it was just a little token of appreciation. So if you are going to do that, and I'll get into that in a bit more in a little bit, you want to put that there as well. So the other basic working of crowdfunding is it gives you the access to an online audience. So rather than being limited to your neighbors, your friends, and family, you have a much bigger pool to make your case to and to access their small contributions. And I mean, that is the essence of crowdfunding. It's utilizing a large group of people to pool their money together to allow you to use that capital to get your business off the ground. Now, a lot of crowdfunding, not all, but a lot of it uses an all or nothing approach. And what that is you set your target of how much you want to raise through the crowdfunding. And if you don't make that target within a certain period of time, then the money is returned to the donees. So when you are making your crowdfunding pitch, you want to be realistic in the time frame and how much money you think can be raised in that time period. And you want to be reasonable. You want to say, this is why I need this amount of money. So I would say it's unlikely for you to make a pitch saying you want $1 million in 2 days. That's going to be very difficult. So just be realistic with your time frames and the money that you are asking for and what it's for. And just to remind people that we'll do the questions at the end. So please put your questions into the chat and we'll do our best to address them at that point. So there are actually different types of crowdfunding. And I've listed them here. You have a donation crowdfunding, reward crowdfunding, lending crowdfunding, and equity crowdfunding. And I will explain each of them in time. So with donation crowdfunding, there's no real benefit to the donor. The benefit is really to the donee. There are intangible benefits. So it's in particular, you're giving the money, you're not expecting anything in return for it. The benefit is just you knowing that you helped this person get their dream to realization. So in that case, donors are motivated by kind of intrinsic or social motivation. The asker doesn't owe the donors anything. Now, this is particularly used for charities, not-for-profits, and also individuals who are raising money for a specific cause, for philanthropy. Now, that doesn't mean that for-profit cannot do this, and a lot of people trying to get capital, they would probably love to have kind of free money in a way. So that is one form of crowdfunding. And there are different crowdfunding sites that focus on different types of crowdfunding. So with the donation crowdfunding, I put together these two, which are good examples of donation crowdfunding websites. They are crowdwise.org and causes.com. I'm not saying these are the only ones. These are just two which I'm highlighting, which are some of the more common or more popular sites for donation crowdfunding. crowdfunding. So yeah, that's donation crowdfunding. Reward model is you get rewards for your donation, but usually the reward that you're getting is it costs a lot less than the amount of donation that you're giving. So an example of this was the Statue of Liberty example, which I mentioned earlier, or it could be you donate money and you get like a T-shirt or a coffee cup, coffee mug from the entrepreneur as like a token reward. So people donating here, they are donating more out of wanting to help that person realize their dream, but they do get a little token of appreciation. But often the token is small. And I should add here that if you're doing this model, you have options. You can do like a tiered reward. So say someone donates $100 to your campaign, you send them a coffee mug. If someone donates $500, they get a T-shirt. If someone donates $1,000, maybe they have the opportunity to meet the entrepreneur and have a breakfast with them or something like that. It's really up to you, but basically you want to make sure that if you are doing the tiered rewards or any rewards, you want to make sure that the reward is cheaper than the amount of money you're getting, because you want to make a profit, right? In this case. Now, there are popular crowdfunding sites for this who are Kickstarter, which I'm more familiar with. And another good one is Indiegogo. And again, I'm not saying these are the only ones. They are just some of the more popular ones. And I wanted to just give you an example so you could go to them and take a look and see what the process is like. Now, the lending model of crowdfunding, this is basically a loan, but instead of going to like a financial institution like a bank or even BEDC, where we have our microloan products, which are pretty good rates, and I would encourage you to check out our website, bedc.bm, for information about that as well. But basically, instead of going there and getting a huge single loan, what you're doing is you're getting a bunch of small individual loans from donees. And there are different ways that the debt can be repaid, the lending, the money that you're getting from the donors. You can repay it with interest, or you can repay it at cost. And it's really up to you which model you want to go for. So in this, there's a combination of intrinsic, that is trying to support someone with realizing their dream, social and also financial motivation, especially if you're getting your money back, especially with an interest. So the lending model is quite a popular one as well. And there are some popular crowdfunding sites that I thought would be interesting. Lending Club is a good one, and Zopa as well. And then I believe these ones are ones where you get an interest back on the donation, not donation, the money you're giving. One which is interest free, so you're just paying back the money at cost. That is kiva.org. And fundingcircle.com is a British one, but that's just more for micro investments. So that's definitely with an interest component to it. So that's an interesting model you can look at. And the other one is equity crowdfunding. Now, this one is interesting. So what you're doing here, I guess you could almost say you're buying a share in the business, in the startup. So you're investing for equity and you're getting profit or revenue sharing as a result. Now, this one has been the slowest one to really take off in terms of popularity in crowdfunding. And that's simply because there are challenges with regulation in terms of regulatory policies in various countries. And then again, you have a mix of intrinsic, social, and financial motivation here. Now, as I said, there have been some challenges in the uptake of equity crowdfunding models. And from what I could find, most of the pioneers here have been in Europe, actually. And I've given you some examples here. You have a Crowdcube, which is a British equity crowdfunding site. And Symbit is actually from the Netherlands. I couldn't work out where quirky.com was from, but those are examples of equity crowdfunding. So as I said, we had some additional speakers originally lined up, and unfortunately they were not able to make it for the rescheduled date. But one of the people that I just wanted to highlight is Kim Wales. Now, Kim Wales is a Bermudian, and she's an expert on crowdfunding. I wouldn't say she's written the book on crowdfunding, but she's certainly written a book on crowdfunding, which is a peer-to-peer lending and equity crowdfunding. And it's an interesting read. I have not finished it completely, but as a Bermudian, I wanted to kind of big her up. And you can see there's an article there from Bernius, which you'll be able to access the link when we send the presentation. And also her website is Wales Capital. And now I just wanted to pause for a minute. And although there are those 4 general types of crowdfunding, I want to make clear that there are also hybrid or different variations on those. So they aren't the only model. There are mixes between them, which you can choose from. And I also wanted to make clear that for people interested in crowdfunding, for entrepreneurs wanting to get capital for startup, there are different avenues you can take. Crowdfunding is just one avenue that you have an option for. You also have the BEDCs, microloan, as I mentioned, and you have traditional loaning practices from financial institutions, and also the more traditional, just going to friends and family. So there are those options there. Now, for those of you who are just joining, I've gone through and given a basic introduction of crowdfunding and the 4 main variations of it and why they are an option for an entrepreneur to explore for raising capital, in addition to other avenues. And I know that there are some questions, and we are going to address them after the presentations. So we have up next Shelly Bell, who is a much more polished speaker and webinar professional than I am. Shelly Bell is a serial entrepreneur and a computer scientist. She's been ranked as one of the top 100 powerful women in business by Entrepreneur Mag, and voted Entrepreneur of the Year by Technically DC. She's a transformational speaker, and she is the Chief Executive Officer of Black Girl Ventures, which is a social enterprise. And I'll let her go into more detail about that. And what I'm going to do now is hand over sharing the screen to her. So please bear with me while I figure this out. Thank you. Shelly, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, give me 1 second to change presenter. Okay, Shelly, I believe you now have control of the screen and can share your side, and I will be quiet now.
All right, so I'm going to be talking about pitching your business. And so in this, as Jonathan talked about the different parts of crowdfunding, he talked about pitching. And pitching has a lot to do with your story, but also pitching has to do with your mindset. So no, it is not the case that you just go put a video up and then you just hope for the best and hope that somebody sees it and hope that it all works out. First, you really have to wrap your head around what it is you're about to do. You're about to go and raise funding. Have you ever raised funding before? Is that something that you're used to? So we're going to talk about, like, what does it mean to really pitch your business? 3 B's, all right? So, and this is what entrepreneurs typically fall into: what they believe, what they have become or are becoming, and or must become, and then where they belong. And so thinking through this, like, raising capital is hard. Yes, it is. It is hard for everyone. You are not alone. Or you say, like, everybody I know is broke. I don't have any friends and family that can give me, $20,000, $10, $5. I don't have nobody. I can't find anybody. And then, so if that's what you believe, that is what will be true. When you think about what you can become, if you say your story isn't enough, oh, my story isn't enough. I'm not gonna be able to do this. Well, as your business grows, you must also grow. I heard a quote once that says that if you want to become an entrepreneur, get closer to God. Well, here we are. And then you ask yourself, where do I belong? Where does my story belong? What is unique about me? Well, my product is different from my competitors. Trust me. Well, nobody knows what that means. Trust what? I just met you. How am I supposed to trust? If you don't tell me, what are you doing? Why should I care? Sometimes people spend a lot of time putting together the crowdfunding videos to say what they're doing, but they don't spend a lot of time to let me know where my opportunity is. So part of talking about your business is so that the person who is listening to you can see the opportunity to be a part of your journey. They can see the opportunity to give you some capital. You are what you believe. You can do what you believe you can do. If you think you can raise the capital, you can. The thing is, you may not be able to do it the way that you were initially thinking. You may have to change your mind. So coming up with a nice video, putting it up online, and thinking that you're just gonna raise all the money because you shared it on your Instagram or on your Facebook is not always the way it works. Okay? Believe you can get the money. So over the course of you building your business, you have done a lot of things. Now, why do I talk about belief? It's like, oh, belief. We're just building a business. I just want to go ask people for the money. Well, you're not going to be able to ask people for the money if you don't believe. If someone if you don't think that anybody has money, you're not going to be able to go ask for, for the money. And with crowdfunding, it's not even about who you know directly. You got to believe that people that know people with money, because crowdfunding is not just a one-to-one. You don't just stop at your inner circle when it comes to crowdfunding. I mean, unless you meet your goal, but you also want those people. So you got to activate people. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about fundraising over fundraising. All right. Now think about it. When you like people who are on Instagram or Twitter or whatever, or you share, you comment, it's because something that you're watching has given you a feeling. Something that you're paying attention to. It says you may be experiencing a greater audio quality. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Something that you're paying attention to actually has caught your attention. I mean, something that you've seen has caught your attention. And so when you think about that, also know that the same goes for raising funding. You have to catch attention by telling your story, showing that video. But in that video, you also got to show me where I can be a part of it. Where can I create with you? Where can I feel like I'm a part of this business? Oh, I funded that business. I gave some money to that business. I am a part of it. So a large part of crowdfunding is what? The crowd. Okay? A crowd. So if you can put up a crowdfunding campaign and you can give some incentives, but if you actually bring people along a journey with you, you're more likely to get more involved with. When people feel like they have helped to create your business, guess what? Not only will they be a part of your crowdfunding campaign, they will actually become your customers. And that's really what you want in the long run. And when people see you and they're like, oh, I thought of that one time too. Yes, you should do that. I want to see that business win. So create content that increases giving. But you want to be strategic about the content that you're creating, right? Tell the story where others can see themselves in the product. Use automation to react to funders. So if make sure you're using some type of CRM, which is a customer relations manager, or you can just use some tools that you can really add to, maybe like a Google account. So one of the ways that we kind of keep up with people as we're fundraising is we use Boomerang. And Boomerang is a plugin you can plug into your Google account where it can actually respond to people. It can actually push something to the top of your inbox when you ask it to. So if nobody responded to this, move this back up to my top of my inbox. If the person opened it but didn't say anything, move this up to the top of my inbox on this day. Well, what that allows us to do is really to create an automation, a human feel to knowing that the person saw the document or saw the email or looked at what you're doing, but did not actually adapt it. And then you can create templates so that you can respond faster. So when you look at I tell founders all the time, ask yourself 5 whys, 5 hows, and 10 whos. Now, I know that may sound a little crazy, but all it is really digging deep into your why. So people will say like, oh, like I created the most fantastic door ever. And I'm like, okay, well, why? Because people need to walk into buildings. Okay, why? Because walking into buildings is how you're going to get to the other side. Okay, but is that the problem you're solving? So why? They're like, well, okay, well, because people needed a doorknob. And you get down to the fact that like what they really were solving for is that people needed to move the doorknob a certain way. And it's like, oh, you build this whole business on creating a door, but really what you were solving is for the doorknob. And so when you're talking about your business, telling your business story, if the person that's going to fund you can't understand why you're doing it, and you can't give them a great enough reason for why you're doing it, you're going to miss out on that funder. So you want to become more of a communicator. Ask first and include more money. Investors want to feel like they're important. So your donors, they want to feel like you're important. So when you're trying to think through, well, what kind of incentive am I going to give them for the incentive-based crowdfunding? Where you're like, what kind of incentive am I going to give them? Think about access to your product in different ways, or access to your story along the journey in different ways. So maybe if they become a donor, it's not that you just give away the product, but maybe it's that you actually invite them to an exclusive event or party. Maybe you actually give them an opportunity to meet other people who have funded. Maybe you give them an opportunity to hear from a speaker exclusively in your market. When you talk about what you're going to do with the funding or what you need the funding for, don't just think about what you're using it for, but where the funding will take you. This is going to bring your donor in a whole lot more. So with the equity crowdfunding piece, this is the person that's actually going to get some small stake in your company. And so they are considered an investor. They're going to want to know, how is this money going to come back? What are you going to do to make that happen? So you have to become an expert at what you're doing. And I mean, this is some general business stuff, but it also is related to crowdfunding, because you got to be able to have the conversation, not just in that one video that you put up or in the one profile that you put up. That's just the beginning of crowdfunding. In fact, let's go back. I'll give you some insights. Crowdfunding actually starts before you launch the campaign. Before you launch the campaign, you want to do some background information and go and talk to some folks to get them to actually commit capital before you launch the campaign. So knowing these particular questions right here around your market, who are you competing with? Excuse me. Who is the largest funder or buyer in your industry? Being able to have this level of conversation is going to cause the people that you will call on the phone, you want to get a certain level of commitments before you even launch that campaign. You want them to say, yes, okay, I'll give you 20. Okay, yes, I'll give you 100. By the time you launch that campaign, you got donors rolling in. Now, that's actually the second leg of the work. And then the third leg of the work is all of the follow-up that you have to do to really keep up with those people and to keep people coming in and donating and getting them their incentives if you have an incentive-based type of campaign. So types of capital. So a lot of times when raising capital, people only think about financial capital. But there's so many other kinds of capital that you need to run your business. You're going to eventually need human capital, talent, social capital, which I'll come back to that one, manufacturer capital, which means that you might need tools to grow your business, natural capital, depending on what you're doing. If you're making some type of natural product out of different berries or different things that you make, different ingredients, you may need some natural or what's called agricultural capital. And there's also cultural capital, which is understanding fully having cultural competency at a level where you can actually speak to your customers different and set yourself apart from some of your competitors. But with crowdfunding, social capital is key. Who do you know? Who do they know? And then break them into categories. So when you think of bonds, you're thinking of people who are closest to you, people you know, people you might go be willing to ask personally for $5, $10, $20, $100 right now. And then from there, you're thinking about people who are bridges between the two. So it's like maybe not somebody you talk to all the time. Maybe it's people that you went to high school with, went to university with, those types of folks. And then you want to look at people who are linked to larger dollars and linked to larger platforms. And who are those people? Our desires are the kings and queens of our fundraising experience. If you don't know what you want, the funder does not know what you want. If you don't know what you want, the donor does not know what you want. If you don't know what you want, the investor does not know what you want. You have to be able to make the ask boldly. Also, but you have to be intentional, and you have to track as you're bringing in those donations, how you work with people to keep more money coming in and more connections coming in. Place your needs where they belong. So when you think about who do you know, who do they know? So if you have a product that is a skincare product, you may want to talk to people who you know around you really love skincare products. Because in the crowdfunding piece, they could become your customer, or they could just be a really strong supporter because they know that you want to do something great. Where do you belong with this business, and why does it belong with you? Why are you doing the business? What is your tie? So you could be doing anything in the world. Why are you doing this business? Right? And so when you think about how you're putting your campaign together, what are you going to say? What am I going to say? Write out your script. And in your script, start thinking about, what have I heard other people say that are attracted to the type of product that I have? What do I think? You may or may not be your own customer. So it may be challenging for you to look at yourself and only solely go off of what you've done or what you know about your product or industry in order to really, really appeal to some donors that you could go after. So what is the value? So donors may or may not care about the incentive if it's the incentive fees, but they know that they want to be a part of your journey. So you want to make sure you are communicating what the value is. And once you have laid out your story, and now you have changed your mindset around what you believe, raising capital is possible. So when you're fundraising, it's challenging because, again, it's all built off of who you know when it comes to crowdfunding. And sometimes at first you may have told yourself, oh, well, I don't know anyone. I can't raise capital. But once you start bringing in that first few dollars, the first few people, you will then have more belief in yourself and start going after it more and more and more. If you have done the planning in the beginning, you'll start to understand what people want to hear and see in order for them to donate to you, because you've done that customer discovery around, hey, you know what? I'm going to launch this crowdfunding campaign in 2 months. Would love to have your donation toward building things that I'm building. And then somebody's going to say, oh, wow, I know somebody that can give 100,000. You're like, what? So that beginning planning stage before you launch the campaign is important. And then the story of the campaign is important. You need value proposition. Do you know all the facts about your industry and what's going on in that industry? And then where do you place this constantly? Where does this message belong so that you can bring in more and more and more and more people to your crowdfunding campaign? I am Shelly Bell. Thank you so much. Thank you to BEDC and to Jonathan for having me to be able to do this presentation about pitching. Let me see how I get back to you. Okay. So glad to be here.
Thank you, Shelly. That was fantastic.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
My pleasure. Thank you for everyone who's joined us so far. I know there are some questions already. I wanted to ask Shelly a quick question. When you were starting out, I always find it's best to learn from people's mistakes, and that way you avoid falling into the same pitfall. Can you tell me what was any mistakes that stand out from you when you were starting out, especially with crowdfunding? Anything you wish you had known back then, which you didn't cover in that presentation?
Yeah, so what are some things I wish I would have mapped my network first.
Mhm.
And I think, that's what I learned. Map your network first. Don't just jump out there and, create a video and throw it out. It's like, yeah, we're gonna take a step back. And I actually have maybe BEDC will have me back for it, but I actually have a framework for how you do that. But take a step back, map your network. Who's who do you know? What is your connection to them? And then what is going to be the best way to make the ask? Make the asks, some of them at least, before you launch your campaign. Another thing that I learned as a secret, some insight on crowdfunding, is to have, you mentioned crowdfunding campaigns where it's kind of all or nothing, where you got to meet your goal or you don't get anything. Well, what I learned that people were doing is, instead of just like jumping out there and trying to raise everything and hope you get it, people were actually having people in their network be like a gap funder. So someone who could, like, if you got 80% of your goal, they would pay the remaining 20%, and then you could just pay them back.
That's
So
a good
having like
idea.
a gap lender so you don't lose out on all of your efforts, I found that people were doing that. And I was like, oh, that's actually pretty smart.
Yeah.
So if a person can give you all of it, but they can still stand in the gap for you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Shelly. That was great. I'm just going to read some of the questions that we have in the question box. The first one is an easy one. I think I can answer that. And that is this session recorded? And yes, this session is being recorded. I believe it will be available online afterwards, and I think it's going to be sent out to everyone who signed up as well. They will be able to access the chat, and I'll be able to go back and see how I can speak better in the future as well. In addition, the PowerPoint slides are going to be sent out, so you will have access to those. I have another question. This is from an individual who has recently tried to set up a crowdfunding site in Bermuda, but it wouldn't let him set it up because he was based in Bermuda. I'm assuming he tried to set up on like GoFundMe or an international site, and I presume you have to say your location in there. And apparently it wouldn't let him operate it. And the question is, was it because he was based in Bermuda? And do I know which crowdfunding sites are available for Bermudian residents to participate in? And now I know, Shelly, you're based in DC, and so you may not have an insight onto this one. One of the other guest speakers that I had, I was actually hoping they could speak on this authoritatively. I can give you a basic answer, but I'm going to qualify to say that I'm not entirely sure, and I'm going to find out. But my understanding is that, yes, just because you put that you were based in Bermuda, I did a quick look before this to try to highlight any examples of Bermudian crowdfunding. And I am aware that there were some people that did do crowdfunding. The only ones that I could find, however, were they are based in Bermuda, but I think they also had an American address, and they put in that they used their American address for that as a workaround. So I do need to find out more about if there are situations, Bermudian-based platforms that are available. And I don't have an answer for that yet, but I will get back to you.
Okay, so I'm seeing, so I just did a quick Google search for a crowdfunding site available in Bermuda. And one of the ones that came back is gogetfunding.com. Have you seen that one before, Jonathan?
I did see it before, but I admit I need to look at it in more detail. But Go Get Me Funding. Can you send me that link, and I'll send it out to people as well?
Yeah, I would say, of course you have to do some research on who they are. Like I do not vouch for any of these companies that I'm naming. I just
Yeah.
did I just did a quick Google site and found this. But gogetfunding.com
Mhm.
is one that appears to be to work. I will post it in the chat.
Thank you. I did find the ones that I came across were people who had used an American residence for GoFundMe in particular. I found quite a few Bermudians using that. I did find one person who I believe is Bermudian based who used the Kickstarter, but without speaking to them individually, I'm not sure how they went around doing that. But I presume they also used an overseas address. Now, there is the potential, I suppose, for a Bermudian to set up a Bermudian-based crowdfunding site. There might be some regulation in that, and one of the people I was hoping to have here tonight would have been able to speak on that. So I will have to find out information on that as well and get back
Well,
to you.
well, you know what? So this is so interesting. So we have Black Girl Ventures has a custom software that I built called SheRaise.com.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we had this conversation because I didn't realize that there was even a challenge of fundraising sites available. So, and I may have to look into some regulation around this as well. But the
Mhm.
Black Girl Ventures platform, SheRaise.com, should be available. The kicker is that with our crowdfunding, you come through our pitch competition. And I do have, we are having conversations about having a Black Girl Ventures pitch competition in Bermuda. Woo-hoo. So more on that as that unfolds. However, our platform that we use for the competition is a crowdfunding platform. So I'll have to look into whether or not we're um have any interruptions or regulation. But yeah, so stay tuned for that. Black Girl Ventures in Bermuda.
Thank you. You see how I smoothly set you up for that?
That was great.
But one thing you also alluded to before when you were talking about the Go Get funding is that you can't vouch for their security of their site, and that is a
Right.
concern. That's why some of the bigger known sites that I highlighted, those are going to be more or less safe. But there is the risk that these are con sites, some of them, where they are fishing for money or information. So do your research. Don't just set up a crowdfunding site on any old website that you come across. You want to make sure that it is, you know, a legit site. So do your homework before you set that up. Um,
Yeah, 100%.
and one of the other questions that I see here is someone asking why why should they use crowdfunding as opposed to other forms of raising capital? And I think I touched on that a bit in my presentation. That it's crowdfunding is just one tool in your toolbox for raising capital. It's not doesn't have to be your only one, but it is an option that you can consider. And the different models, especially you get the ones where you don't owe the givers anything. That's just free capital for you. That's almost going to be great. But the other ones are different models. But that doesn't mean you also can't explore, as I said, BEDC's microloan product for new businesses. It doesn't mean you can't also explore more traditional, going to your friends and family, the kind of old school crowdfunding. It doesn't mean you also can't find other angel investors or even traditional banking institutions. So you don't have to use crowdfunding. We're just saying it is an option for a startup to find additional capital. I don't know, Shelly, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. So one of the things about raising capital is that a lot of times underrepresented founders, women and minorities, or in as we would say in the US, but I mean in terms of like you may not have, a family member that can give you $50,000, or a large amount of capital for you to go and try your business out. So if you could do like fundraising where you don't have to pay people back, or even thinking about something like, I'm not sure if Kiva is available there, but like small loans or even loans that BDC may have. to think about like how you get started. And then sometimes you hit a plateau or place in your business. I know like as COVID hit and people had to quarantine, people took a hit in business. And so because of that, they needed some infusion of capital to keep them going, because maybe the time when people would normally bend, you couldn't be outside. So their business as they were operating got shut down. And so because of that, they had to figure out, what to do next. And so that infusion of capital could be key. Sometimes, honestly, people do it to just launch. And not necessarily they need the capital, but they do it to get its attention around their product, because it's a really great way to get your first batch of customers.
Right.
Right. And they're already ready for your product to release. So it could be, if you need an infusion of capital, and then the crowdfunding equity, with those platforms, you usually have to have a certain level of revenue. So when people use the crowdfunding equity tools, it's because they're wanting to really, really get into some larger dollars, and to start to move in a place of like receiving investments.
Okay. Shelly, I'm just going to, I think I'm going to try to unshare your screen and go back to my screen just so that I can give some people some links to look at. So bear with me as I try to figure that out.
Did it stop sharing? Oh,
Can
there
you,
we go.
yeah. Is it sharing my screen now?
Yep.
It is?
Yep.
What do you see?
I can see your screen.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint? Because I can't.
Yeah, I can see you and the PowerPoint.
Huh.
And no, I didn't know. So great.
Okay.
Visa's not available. Okay. I'm gonna do some research on that. In terms of like what platforms are available. Is PayPal available?
I believe PayPal is, but I will have to research that as well. So on my screen right now is some emails for BEDC. You can email info@bedc.pm. My personal email address is jstarling@bedc.pm, and our website is bedc.pm as well. So one question that I have as well is, are there any shortfalls in using crowdfunding as opposed to other forms? And I think we touched on that a little bit in terms of like the all or nothing. And you mentioned a good idea of having a gap funder to make sure you don't lose all of it. And we touched on some of the security issues that you have to make sure that the crowdfunding site is a legitimate one. Are there any other shortfalls you can think of, Shelly?
Yeah, I mean, not having a large enough network is usually not so. It is an undertaking for you to raise the capital through crowdfunding. So make sure you give yourself space and time and planning. Not planning is not productive when it comes to crowdfunding, because it may take you 3 months or so to raise it, but it should have taken you about just as much time to plan it. So I would just say, some places where people fall short is they don't plan, they don't map out the journey, like map out exactly how they want the crowdfunding campaign to go. And they just, again, they record a video and they think about so much about a video, but they don't think
Right.
about the bigger picture. So that's why I say the crowdfunding kind of falls short.
Mhm. And I think the biggest challenge for crowdfunding in Bermuda is something that we've already kind of explored, being able to actually use some of the crowdfunding platforms from Bermuda. And you mentioned PayPal, and my understanding from PayPal, and I see it in some of the questions here as well, is that it is available if you have a U.S. bank account, but otherwise it's more available for sending money as opposed to receiving it. So that's something that I think is going to be one of the biggest challenges in Bermuda. And it's not to say we can't overcome that. It's just saying that we are aware there are some issues there.
Well, there's a business opportunity for
Exactly.
someone. Another crowdfunding, so you may have heard of it, but like a susu. This is a little bit more intimate. It's not on a crowdfunding platform, and it's more like a group lending. So it's like a group of friends or family may get together and decide to put their money together and then give it out to each other over the course of time, but everybody keeps putting money in. So, I
Right.
mean, there could be, when you think about crowdfunding runs the gamut. We talked about crowdfunding platforms a lot and the aspect of crowdfunding, but crowdfunding is also some of those kinds of things, like where you actually have a small group that you're just going to and having the conversation about the capital and raising the capital through several people. You could bring a bunch of people together, have a presentation, you could go around. So like it's fundraising in general, and crowdfunding is typically based on sharing information in crowds of people that can give to you sometimes at a distance, like through technology, but going through and having conversations with people about getting capital is essentially the point.
One of the listeners raises a good point. I don't know if you have them in the U.S. I think you do, called Club Hands, which is a kind of an informal crowdfunding that we have here. And I just want to make a public service announcement just to remind everyone here in Bermuda that tomorrow is the general election. So just remember to go out and vote. Polls are open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And the reason I just thought of that, other than it's tomorrow, is that I am aware that one of the proposals being discussed in this election is the creation of a national digital bank. And I'm not sure exactly what that's going to involve, but I'm hoping that might be one way that we can resolve some of these issues around crowdfunding in Bermuda and the challenges we're seeing around that. I don't know. I'm just saying that's a possibility. That's something to keep an eye out for. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't actually see any additional questions. And Shelly, I think you've answered most of the questions I had pre-prepared in the event of us not having questions. So if there's still the opportunity if anyone wants to add some questions into the chat. And otherwise, Shelly, any final thoughts?
I was, evaluate what you need for your business. If you're looking for ways to get capital, crowdfunding is absolutely a way. So finding the right platform, making the plan, and actually executing on that plan will help you be successful. You can follow me at I am Shelly Bell, IAMSHELLY on Instagram, Twitter, everywhere actually. I'm ShellyBell.com is my website, but then the social platform is I am Shelly Bell. If you're stay tuned for some announcements on us working with BEDC more and doing work in Bermuda to help get women funded.
Okay. And I know we unshared your screen, but if anyone wants to find your website as well, they can simply Google Black Girl Ventures and it will come up. And it's in your presentations. When we send it out, we'll be able to see it as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We actually just got an additional question. When entering into discussion in crowdfunding, it's important to find like-minded people. How would you perpetuate that meeting? How would you go about finding those like-minded people, I guess, in your experience?
So we're talking about like-minded people for community or going to raise the capital.
I think it's like identifying who is likely to give you the money, what part of the community, who supports this the vision that you have. And I would guess that's market research. If you're creating your business plan, you're going to have an idea of who you're going to market it to and who's going to benefit from that product. I guess. Those that appreciate what you were trying to do. I guess that's
Okay, well, that's more community. So when you
right.
talk about like people who are pretty much on the journey with you and can rally behind you, give you support, give you tips. You want to find your local entrepreneur community, and now maybe even a virtual entrepreneur community. I would be looking for like conferences like these. And when I say like, when I was telling people to like drop their name and their company in the chat, like even though these conferences are virtual, you still want to connect with people and reach out and let people know you're there. And when you ask a question, introduce yourself or say what your say who you are, what your name is. Like those are ways to find other entrepreneurs, because you're gravitating to the same webinars and conferences, so that other people are trying to meet you as well. There's a platform called B2B Match. Now it was developed by a woman in Canada. I will drop it in the chat. I don't know if everybody can see the chats I've been putting up there, but B2B Match .com, and it is I just met the founder, and it is a profile, a platform to match you to like mentors and community members. So that could also be really interesting. If you identify as Black, brown, and woman, so Black or brown and woman, you could join the Black Girl Ventures platforms. So you could join bgvconnect.com, or you could join, go to blackgirlventures.org to get more information about that. We have a large community. We also have a Facebook group. So these are all people who are like supporting each other. BGV Connect is a little bit more intimate. We actually support our founders directly through BGV Connect. And then the Facebook group is open. So, I mean, we moderate it, so it's not just a bunch of things flying, but you can go and join that.
Okay. Thank you for that. And we'll make sure that these links go out when we send out the presentation as well. And I just wanted to add that for startup businesses, for people interested in becoming a new business or creating a new business, I want to remind people that they can go to Bermuda Economic Development Corporation's website, which is bedc.bm, and we can provide people with advice on business planning. We've got several products here which are useful, in particular our microloan products. And I want to remind people of our rocket pitch coming up. So that is one additional way where you can practice your rocket pitch, and you stand the opportunity to win some startup capital and in-kind services. And you can find that information on our website, bedc.bm, or you can email info@bedc.bm for more information. And in addition to places like Bermuda Economic Development Corporation, there are other accelerators in Bermuda. I'm thinking of Ignite. So those are options there. Now for the rocket pitch, there will be more information on our website, but it's going to be a virtual competition. We are mindful of COVID-19, and while Bermuda has a pretty good control of COVID-19 at the moment, we just, we're putting people over, well, public health takes priority. So we're developing a virtual rocket pitch. But when is it? Will be the final is, I want to say November 18th, but it will be on our website, and the website will also have deadlines. There are several categories. There's a youth rocket pitch, which is for 18 and under. Then you have the cooperative pitch, which is new this year. That's for people wanting to start cooperatives. Then you also have 3 categories within rocket pitch itself. I want to say they are green, pink, and town. Green is for like environmental related businesses. Pink is for tourism related, or tourism or service related, and town is for kind of local focused companies. But we will have all that information will be available on our website, bedc.bm, or you can email info@bedc.bm for your queries, and we will get back to you with more detail on that. I think that's pretty much it on our side. So I would, unless you have anything else to say, Shelly? We're good?
No, just thank you for having me. I always appreciate these opportunities to speak. Yeah, thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. And for everyone who's joined us today, thank you for joining and listening, and thank you for the questions. For the questions I wasn't able to answer, I have taken a note of them, and I will research it, and I will get back to you when I can. You have my email address there as well, so if you don't hear from me, just send me an email, and I'll do my best to get the correct answers for you. So on that note, I think we are going to end the webinar. And for everyone in Bermuda, please remember to go out and vote tomorrow. Do your civic duty. And otherwise, have a good night. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Shelly, for participating.